The opinion polls in France are throwing up a surprise. Marine Le Pen is now surging ahead. Everyone uses one adjective to describe her, and that's far right. And frankly, it fits. Le Pen is anti-immigration. She dabbles in Islamophobia. She's tough on abortion, and she opposes LGBTQ rights. This is Le Pen's third run for presidency. In 2012, she finished third. In 2017, she finished second. So this time, she's creating a lot of buzz. In fact, the new opinion polls have unsettled her opponents. Here's what the latest one shows. Emmanuel Macron is at 53%, Marine Le Pen at 47%. And this is the narrowest margin yet. In 2017, Macron led with 66% of the popular vote. Le Pen was a distant second. This time around, it's a lot closer. The French stock markets are clearly not happy about it. Major indices dropped 1.3%. Banks like BNP Paribas were the worst hit. Investors feel a Le Pen presidency is bad news. And why is that? Because she favors a higher retirement age. She also plans to nationalize highway operators. But more than policies, it's the unpredictability that's bothering them. Marine Le Pen is a disruptor, and stock markets hate disruptors. So why is she polling so well? How is she closing the gap on Emmanuel Macron? Because of three reasons. Reason number one, Marine Le Pen has tried to temper her public image. She dismissed anti-Semites from her party. She toned down her rhetoric on LGBTQ rights and abortion, sort of like a PR makeover. Now, just to be clear, Marine Le Pen is still a far-right demagogue. She's not changing her policies, she's changing the perception of her policies.
The circumstances do not allow us to implement cooperation to fight Islamic fundamentalism with Russia as we speak. It is obvious. But here I am, always trying to take a reasonable stance, as reasonable as possible, but mostly to take France's interest into account.
So that's a big pitch. Reasonable but far right. Marine Le Pen is also helped by some of her rivals, especially this one, Eric Zemmour. If you think Le Pen is problematic, Zemmour is worse. He is a Holocaust denier in a country that was conquered by Nazi Germany. Long story short, Zemmour makes Le Pen look acceptable. Reason number two, the far right is not a pariah anymore. It is a mainstream ideology in today's France. How did that happen? Because the far right cashed in on the anti-immigration sentiment. France for the French. That is Marine Le Pen's rallying call. She wants to prioritize native French people over jobs and welfare schemes. Plus, a burqa ban in public. That's what she calls for. She convinced the French people that immigration threatens their identity. Compare that to Germany. They too welcomed thousands of refugees in the last decade, but Germans elected a centre-left chancellor in 2021. So what did Germany do different? They integrated the refugees into their society. That's something that France could never do. Which brings us to reason number three, the Macron presidency. For all his grand ambitions, what exactly did Emmanuel Macron achieve? Under his leadership, France became more divided. Under him, we saw the massive Yellow Vest protests. You see, Macron's election was a bit of an aberration in France. Usually the French go two ways, left or right. Centrists have traditionally been ignored. Macron came with a new agenda. Neither left nor right, he said. In 2017, it was a great campaign idea. He swept the election with 66% of the votes. But 5 years on, centrism is losing its sheen. And that is a big worry for Macron. A lot of French voters, especially the youth, are not planning to vote. They are disenchanted with the entire system.
Le souffle du nouvel espoir de Macron il y a 5 ans.
After the breath of new hope from Macron 5 years ago, we now have people who are much more basic in terms of politics, who are of a relatively advanced stage, which is expected of politicians who enter the presidential election. On top of that, Macron, who is, it seems to be once again the youngest, but who was really disappointing during his mandate. So the spark of hope we had 5 years ago has disappeared.
Vachement déçu durant son mandat. Du coup,
the rise of Le Pen is not a coincidence. It is part of a consistent and well-thought-out plan, what she calls de-demonization of the far right. It may not work in 2022. Chances are Macron will still end up winning, but the trend will certainly worry the centrists and the leftists. Far right is not a French untouchable anymore. It is acceptable and surging. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.